Quest to Succeed. Chapter 31. Despite all kinds of loot and suppression of people in India and Africa, the British people were very fond of praising themselves and wanted to be identified as the most tolerant and civilized society with innovative ideas. Many Indians came to live in Britain after the Second World War due to shortage of labor in that country. They worked hard and built properties and shops in London and in other cities. Damages were, however, inflicted to Asian properties in the 1970s, in the 1980s. On a Friday night, 2 students were attacked and killed in London. After a week, a youth was brutally knifed and killed in Southall, Middlesex. A black student was stabbed and killed in southeast London by a local gang. The police made every attempt to protect these offenders, but after much publicity and efforts, some of them were sent to prison. But the student's family lost their son, and the community lost a young man. Even though the Indians and other visible minorities were invited to work in the National Health Service (NHS), the other public services, and in private sector, they were often questioned by ordinary British people. When were they returning to their countries? They all behaved like the immigration officers. Perhaps the British government did not explain its policies to the public that these people were in the United Kingdom on their invitation and on being given a work visa. This did not reflect Britain's tolerance towards the racial minorities. When Adil Amal had a dream that he had been asked by Allah to throw out the British Asians from Africa, many of them decided to come to Britain because they were British passport holders and had a right to settle in the United Kingdom. British politician Ernie Pickering made a speech. He visualized rivers of blood in British cities if Asians were allowed to come to the United Kingdom and blossom here. His vision was no different from the dream of an African dictator. It portrayed Pickering's racial hatred and racial prejudice. There had been no rivers of blood in England. The British government of that time showed statesmanship and expelled Pickering from the ruling party. Efforts were also made to improve race relations, especially by the Socialists, the Labour Party, and the trade unions. Jay enjoyed teaching at the school. He also continued to improve his qualifications. A few teachers were against his furtherance in the school and hindered his career progress. His head of department approached to discourage him from applying for an advancement. He was blunt and told him, "You must be kidding if you think that you would attain that job." His right to think was taken away by this racist thug. Jay found it strange and repugnant. People who had been associated with the school found it repulsive and repellent. It was incompatible with the school system and the laws of the country. They maintained that an injustice had been done to Jay. He did not make any official complaint to the authorities against the teacher who conspired with the headmaster and stopped his promotion. The information, however, reached the Education Authority. The CEO made the headmaster an inspector of schools in another borough. It was a promotion. A few months later, Jay learned that his old headmaster had been sacked from his new position. He had done wrong not only to Jay, but he did the same thing to some other teachers at the school. He considered the school as his fiefdom. Yet, racial prejudice continued in the United Kingdom and the United States and in many other countries. Some teachers advised Jay to find a job at another school. He, however, was not going to leave the school without a good reason, but moved to another department at the same school. There he excelled and made enormous contribution to students' education. The number of students soared in his new department because of good public examination results, which were always above national average. Jay had an excellent teaching method. He could relate his subject matter to students who enjoyed their studies. He was a father figure to some of them. He had his own children of the same age group. He knew that many students needed reassurance, sympathy, and support. Jay and his family continued to live in London, where they had been comfortable. Jay wrote to his cousin Nitin about the area and explained its beauty and the facilities that were available: the bus services, railway stations and supermarkets, access to central London shopping areas, accessibility to libraries and archives, which were to become his second home, where he instituted his research on several topics to author books. He had hardly looked back to his early years. On the insistence of one of his mature students, he, however, talked about it. how he left the primary school and his village at the age of 9 and took his degree at 18. There was nothing fascinating about it. He sensed no excitement or trepidation. Others drew some encouragement from such an account. It was difficult to recall those scenes and incidents. Only a few major happenings reoccurred onto his mind. One student was particularly keen to know more about him. He thought that he would like to make progress like Jay and improve his status through good education. Jay was delighted to know that, and he encouraged him to study. Jay was always eager to do something new. He had multifarious ideas. He observed that the world was economically dominated by the capitalist countries. Nations had moved towards secularism and multiculturalism. Yet, after the Second World War, the states of Pakistan and Israel were created on religious grounds. In India, some people were not allowed to enter temples because of their caste, which was unjustifiable. In course of time, he noticed that such discernment had started to recede. Legal actions were taken against those who stopped worshippers from gaining access to temples or for not being employed to higher positions. He thought that there should be an equality of opportunity for everyone. Indians living outside of India worked hard and were mostly highly qualified. These people had shown their mettle and were being appointed to higher positions in all fields. Indians had been identified good at figure work. They were working as accountants, auditors, and investment bankers. These citizens had brought fame and pride to their country of origin. Yet, India was not a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. Many Indian bureaucrats worked at this world organization and provided good administration. The Indian politicians have proved their abilities and skills and have shown their progressiveness and determination. The economic progress has been visible. Jay hoped that they would continue to work for the welfare of their countrymen and the world with a belief in Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. The entire world is like a family. In India, the demand for education has increased many folds. The government could not meet this demand, especially for medical studies and for higher education. The middle-class parents had started to send their children to study abroad in the United States of America, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Some students had gone to study in China, Russia, and the Ukraine. Others were attending courses in Nepal, especially in medical studies, even though it was an underdeveloped country but had more places in medical colleges than they could recruit locally. Jay was in demand to talk about India and its ancient cultures. People thought that he might provide knowledge about the subcontinent. At a meeting, he acquainted his audience of the two great civilizations which sprang up in India 7,000 years ago. One of them, the Indus Valley Civilization, was famous for its trade, administration, and architecture. The excavations of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa towns in the states of Sindh and West Punjab suggested that people of these cities were fond of art, painting, and sports. They had good drainage systems, swimming pools, and squared houses. They had started to build two-story houses in cities. The Indus Valley people, called Indians, were business-minded. They did trade with Rome and sold expensive jewelry, silk cloth, rice, and high-quality cotton cloth to the Roman emperors and their household. The silk trade route was used to carry goods to Rome and other parts of the empire. Some people argue that this should be identified as spice route and silk route, as a great amount of spices was sold to the Romans. There were stories that Indians sold expensive jewelry and silk cloth, which emptied the emperor's treasury. Their economy declined, which led to the end of the Roman Empire. The other Indian civilization flourished in the plains of the Ganga and Jamuna rivers. The people of these areas were literary-minded and created the Vedas, Upanishads, the famous epics of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and of course the Gita. Many philosophers, poets, and mathematicians contributed to this culture. The Taxila University in the Punjab, Banaras, Varanasi, and Prayag, Allahabad universities in Uttar Pradesh, Ujjain University in Madhya Pradesh, along with Pataliputra, modern Patna, and Nalanda universities in Bihar, were the great seats of learning and research. Sanskrit was the main language of these people. They followed the teachings of the Vedas and attempted to seek a reality of life through discussion, thinking, and meditation. Jay continued to discern at the meeting that the recorded history of India, however, began with the founding of the Mauryan Empire. Prior to that, city-states and village republics existed. The villages were not isolated from the mainstream of social and economic life of the nation. Apart from the political unity, a common culture prevailed from Kashmir in the north to Kerala in the south, from Gandhar, now in Afghanistan known as Kandahar, in the west to Assam in the east. Chandragupta Maurya, the founder of the Peacock Throne, was the first emperor of the United India. His grandson, Emperor Asoka, was an excellent administrator. He turned to Buddhism in the later part of his life. He sent missionaries to Southeast Asia, West Asia, Sri Lanka, Mongolia, China, and Central Asia. He dedicated his wealth to spread Buddhism and to work for the welfare of all human beings across the world. He also laid a sound foundation of economy, which remained the highest in the world for more than 1,500 years. Hinduism, however, remained the major religion in India. It was not just a religion, it was a way of life. Any one person or a group of people did not establish it. It has existed since the dawn of civilization. It was Sanatan Dharma, an eternal religion. The Buddhism and Jainism had made India passive. The land and climate of the country required people to work hard and not to waste their energies in lethargy and laziness. In the 3rd century AD, Adi Shankaracharya started to revive the ancient Vedic Hindu system. He appealed for cultural unity of the nation. He traveled across the country and realized that there was a need for continuous guidance of religious teachings. In a large country like India, one Shankaracharya and one math temple would not be sufficient to cater for the spiritual needs of the whole nation and to continue with the teachings of Hinduism. He therefore set up 4 maths in 4 corners of the country. 1 math each was established at Dwarka in the west, at Puri in the east, at Badrinath in the north, and at Kanchipuram in the south. 1 Shankaracharya each was appointed to run these maths. They were to communicate with one another and travel in their designated areas. Later, a Shankaracharya was appointed at Sringeri, where a new math temple was set up. In course of time, however, many organizations sprang up with their own agenda for social reform and to look after the interests of the communities. The Shankaracharya still exist. Their role was, however, limited. The government of independent India adopted a secular system in 1947. India therefore remains a multi-religious and multicultural country, though majority of people are Hindus. The ancient Hindus thought that Hinduism was a religion because it had values and rituals. It embraced social customs and traditions. All aspects of human life, from birth to death and beyond, were discussed in it. The main beliefs of Hinduism included cosmology, the doctrine of the karma, the concept of varnashrama, 4 stages of life, the childhood and youth, the household age, the retirement and the vanaprastha, living in the forest or returning to villages from the cities, and the philosophy of the competence. The people at the gathering appreciated Jay's invocatory.